Hello, everyone, and welcome to Surviving the Survivor. We apologize about that. Joel probably accidentally hit the end button instead of the leave button on his cell phone. It's his first time doing that, so apologize. If you are here, then you have been redirected to the lunch live. It is obviously not lunchtime yet. However, because our last stream ended, we now are rerouting everyone here. So again, if you were on the other live, apologies. We did have a quick little tech issue and that live stream ended, but we are working to get Tim Jansen back on here with us. Just bear with me as I send him some emails and get him back in this chat. But I just wanted to remind everyone that right now they do have a sidebar and they will not be coming back until 10:30 in the morning. So do not worry, you did not miss anything. I'm just going to hop off for a minute, make sure Tim is good to get back here. And then again, we will continue to discuss everything happening this morning and Tim will answer your questions. Give me a minute. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Surviving the Survivor. If you were just with us on the previous live, apologies. We had a little tech issue and the stream ended, but we are working to get Tim Jansen back up here. He's going to continue to speak to us about what's been going on this morning and what we can expect over the next couple of hours. Right now, the court is in a sidebar and they are not coming back until 10:30. So do not worry. You did not miss anything. And thank goodness we have Tim Jansen back. Thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah, sorry, everybody. Apparently, we got disconnected. Not on my end, but listen, I was trying to say, I think everybody saw how cool and calm and collective Georgia was. Georgia knew her game plan. Georgia knows her case. Georgia wasn't going to be change her game plan because of this nonsense by the defense. She told the court, Judge, not only are we going to call him in rebuttal, we may call him beforehand because she knows how important Dan's testimony can be to undercut whatever cockamamie defense theory Donna comes up with. She's not going to waive that because these people didn't do the proper thing. I don't know how any lawyer, independent lawyer, can go in there within an hour. So you say 10:15. So that lawyer has got an hour with her and to adequately inform her of her rights, what she's giving up. I would never have my client give up a right to have effective representation, cross-examination on a first-degree murder case. I probably would never do it even on a third-degree felony case because you're asking a client to give something up. It's like giving up an organ. Why would she do that? Why? To have Dan try her case now? Wouldn't she rather have an independent lawyer that's fully prepared to cross-examine, knowing this is going to affect the rest of her life? And that's what the judge is going to say. The judge is going to take this all into account. He's going to let him put the record. He's probably reviewing some case law. Now that he's got information from Alex and them that they did nothing, they don't have any waivers in writing. They never got an independent lawyer. They never retained an independent lawyer. So this lawyer is going to be forced to cross-examine Charlie and the day before trial, a murder trial. And how is that person going to get up to speed? Just not happening. So unless Charlie comes back later at 1:15 and waives, I do not believe this trial will go forward. I believe that Dan and Alex, I think Alex will withdraw because he's been tainted. And I think that Dan will be removed by the court.
And Tim, some people are just joining us, especially since we had that live stream mishap. So can you give us a quick recap of what's going on this morning and what are like the top 3 points that people need to know if they're just tuning in right now?
Yeah. Donna has a right to any lawyer she wants, but it's not absolute. Donna cannot have a lawyer represent her who represented a witness in an attorney-client relationship and now is adverse, meaning he's going to be cross-examining his old client. That never happens. It will not happen. The Florida bar rules are clear that it's never going to happen, should not have happened, and it should have been resolved earlier. So that is clear. Now they're trying at the last minute to try to put a Band-Aid on this major hemorrhage. And the judge sees that this is not going to fix. It's going to keep bleeding so much that any conviction and trial will be worthless because another lawyer will come back and say, they had ineffective lawyer. Judge, you knew he had ineffective because the lawyer was hired on the day of jury selection to be prepared to cross-examine a major witness. That is ineffective counsel. And I think the lawyers, even Alex and Dan, will say, yeah, we were ineffective. So where are we at? We're back to square one. Why do this twice? Fix it the first time, do it the right way. And unless Charlie waives that privilege, which I don't think he will, I think he'd be foolish too, because I don't think he wants to testify. And he's got his own issue. He's trying to cut his own appeal. And just remember, there's only one seat in that raft, right? And Charlie wants a seat and Donna wants a seat. And there's only one seat. Who gets it? Each wants their own seat.
Joel.
That's the part, right?
Joel, if you can you hear us, Joel? Joel, can you hear us? Okay. I'm going to mute him for now since he has a lot of feedback anyway. But Deb C has a question here, Tim. If Charlie waives, which I know you just said that you don't think he would, but if he does waive, will the judge make sure to stress that he can't say that he was forced later?
That's a good question. If I was a judge, I'd have Charlie brought to the courthouse at 1:15. I'd have his main lawyer, Michael Ufferman, present. I'd have Michael Ufferman under oath as an officer of the court, say that he has talked to his client and it's a free, independent evaluation, and he is now waiving it. And I would have Charlie under oath say he's waiving it. That's the only way the judge is going to feel comfortable that you have a lawyer, an officer of the court who's been notified of the situation, and he's now changed. Now remember, he said he wasn't waiving it Saturday. Today is Tuesday. That's 3 days. Now he can change his mind, but the court's going to have to feel comfortable that that mind was changed, not because of pressure from Donna or their lawyers, but because he made another decision, an informed decision with legal counsel.
And Tim, I'm just going to pull up some questions for you, and I'm going to have you answer those so that I can call Joel and try to help get situated. So I'm going to pop Joel off for a minute, and I'm just going to pump some questions up here. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Here we go, and Joel and I will be right back. Tim is staying with you guys.
Caviana, this trial could be delayed for 8 months. A new lawyer has to get hired. A new lawyer has to be given all the information, go through all this, speak to Donna. Probably going to have to be more than one lawyer, going to have to be a firm. And it could take 8 months to a year. So yeah, it could take a while. I would say first degree murder, no sooner than 8 months to a year. You're talking about a first degree murder with a lot of tapes and a lot of things that they'll have to come up to speed, and Dan cannot help out. Now they can read the transcripts from Charlie's trial, which will help. So they'll see Charlie's trial, which was a big help, but they're going to have to read the whole transcripts. Then they'll have to meet with Donna and then come up with a game plan that's separate from anything Dan and Alex did. I think that Dan and Alex will probably be tainted, so neither of them could probably participate. I think that Alex at this point probably would want to withdraw because he's already in the middle of this hornet's nest, and it's not going well. It's not going well for him. He lives here. He has to appear before Judge Everett. And I'm sure he feels uncomfortable the way this thing has gone down. Will Alex and Dan be sanctioned? That's a question that the Florida bar will decide if this matter is sent to the Florida bar There could be sanctions. There could be an investigation. I think Dan more so than Alex. Alex came in and built the Chinese wall. Alex said the only time he met with Charlie was with Offerman present. So that was not a violation. I think Alex is kind of got brought in this thing and at the last minute. Dan's going to have to explain why he did what he did and did not inform the court. I don't hear you.
I'm not hearing you.
Here we go.
Hey, Joel, we hear you now. Can you hear us? Joel?
Joel, can you hear us?
I have you now, Tim. I think I
Okay,
figured
good.
this out, Tim. I got my regular camera set up now.
Yeah.
Did it
You
all
look-
on
Yeah.
I did it all on my own, Tim. Feeling pretty good about that. So you hear me okay, Timbo?
I can hear you great. And I wanted to answer your question. Yes, I recognize where you are. I've been
Yeah.
walking in that spot for the last 30 years.
There you go. And I can tell you right now that Dan Rashbaum just passed me.
Yeah.
There's definitely kind of a quizzical appearance on everyone's face. People are kind of scurrying around the halls right now. As I said earlier, by the way, it is an absolute miracle that I am connected. Got the microphone connected, I'm so proud of myself, got the light connected, got the camera connected, all on my very own.
You ended our last stream.
Yeah, I apologize for that. That's one minor issue. So Tim Jansen, just wanted to pick up on this. So your friend, the producer from 2020 came over to me. This is how well-known Tim Jansen is. She comes over to me just now, and this is only the flavor you can get being here on the ground. She said, "Were you just talking to Tim Jansen?" And I said, "Yes, I was, because we had him before you. We were fighting." And no, we were not fighting. But she said, "What is Tim saying?" And I told her what you were telling me. And she basically said, if anybody knows, Tim knows. And she's like, basically said, "Wow, what a cluster." So everyone right now is kind of just waiting. Now, Steve Cohen has reached out to some of our contacts and some of our sources, and Tim makes an excellent point. I mean, an absolutely excellent point, which is, if you're Donna's criminal defense attorney, and we still don't know who this independent counsel is, at least I don't, but if you're that person, you don't want them rushing to waive a conflict on a murder one trial. However, Tim, some of the people we talked to said, look, Donna Adelson, if she waives this, could wait 2 years for counsel to get up to speed. And does she really want to sit in jail? So where do you fall on that, Tim? With her age, 74 years old, she's been in jail basically almost a year now already. Is she going to just want to move forward and risk waiving that conflict? That's question number two. And question number one. And question number two is, if they're not even going to call Charlie, is this all a moot point at this point?
So one, they are calling Charlie, and she said definitely in rebuttal, and they may call him sooner. And you know why they may call him sooner? Because as soon as Alex gave the opening statement, if he came up with some nonsense new theory of defense other than the double extortion, Charlie was going to be the witness for the state in their case in chief. Okay, that's what she's waiting for. So how independent is the lawyer, right? Okay, so you're getting an independent. Are you getting a lawyer who's conservative, or someone who's friends with these lawyers, knows what the game plan is, and going to convince them vis-a-vis I'm independent, knowing that his goal is to try to convince her to waive? Or do you get a true independent lawyer who's going to protect Donna's position and her life and say there's no way you should waive this? I don't know of any lawyer that's got any experience and has done this from any time would allow her to waive and have some lawyer who's never seen the case, never talked to her, be the one cross-examining Charlie on a first-degree murder case, and the trial starts tomorrow.
Tim, are you hearing me? Because yes,
I can hear you great. Yeah.
Okay, COE had me muted for a moment. So listen, I just I took some notes I haven't had a chance to look at from inside the courtroom. Again, I was telling you earlier, very low turnout, not a surprise really, because today was just jury selection. Again, I haven't really seen any jurors on this floor, which is atypical because I would see them.
They're
So I'm wondering,
downstairs. They're on the first
they're
floor. They're
on
not
the floor.
brought up yet until a judge says he's ready for them.
Okay, so and it looks like they may have been dismissed anyway till the afternoon. So maybe
That's
they're
right.
coming back this afternoon. Basically, Alex Morris, when he was arguing up there, Judge Everett said, I mean, the obvious question is, why did you wait? Why did you wait until this very last moment? To which he kind of put the blame on Mike Offerman, saying, look, he didn't file this motion. Are they just finger pointing essentially right now, Tim? Is Offerman upset with the way you think Alex Morris is handling this by essentially throwing him under the bus now?
Alex Morris reminds me of the second day in law school when a kid was called in class. He wasn't prepared, and he stood up and said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And he said, "I'm not prepared." I think Alex felt that way when the judge asked that question, why wasn't it brought up sooner? I think Alex felt like he built this wall and that was enough, but he didn't do enough to look at the case law. That's not enough. You need to do more than that. And I feel bad for Alex. I've known Alex for a long time. This is not Alex's doing. This is not something Alex would do on his own.
Needless to say, this is high drama and the trial hasn't even started yet. Again, I completely hear what Tim is saying loud and clear. And Tim's an excellent criminal defense attorney. So you don't want to mislead your client with information. And that's why Tim's saying if I was representing her as this kind of third-party counsel, Tim said he would tell her not to waive the conflict. But
no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And another lawyer could get up to speed, and you might have missed this, because they have the transcripts for Charlie's trial. So that lawyer can read the entire transcripts. Now, that might take two or 3 weeks to do that, but that'll give them a good foundation of what's going on. I think the new lawyer could be ready in about 8 months.
The question is, at this point, I'm just turning things around here. I don't want to. The jurors are not on the floor, but as someone was pointing out, you don't want to capture any jurors on camera. So kind of sliding into this nook here.
I don't think the jurors are up there. I think they're on the first floor.
On the first floor.
And I think
you're
they've been released. They're coming in waves. I think they had coming at 8, and I think they had some coming at 11 and some coming in the afternoon. So I don't think there's any jurors there.
Yeah. Just trying to adjust all this on the fly. So it was just very uncomfortable in there. And speaking about a second-year law student, I was never in law school, but I certainly felt like a law professor, like Joe Patuto type, scolding the students in there. It was not pleasant for any of the counsel there. Do you know who Offerman's associate is by any chance, Tim?
Yeah, her name is Laurel. And the independent lawyer that's coming in his name is Adam Commissar, who he worked for me for about 6 or 7 years. I know him quite well.
Is he kind of like a taller?
Yeah, right. He's standing right behind you. He's standing right behind you. You see him to your other side. That is Adam Commissar right there on his phone.
Okay.
That's him.
He was in the courtroom. Okay.
He's the one. He's going to be the independent lawyer. He's good friends with Alex, and he's on his phone now. He's going to do the independent with Donna.
So why is he not speaking to Donna at the moment? Why is he out here in the hallway?
He may have already spoken to her, or he's trying to get back there to speak to her. Maybe you should go up to her and ask him, "Hey, Adam, are you going to be involved in this case?"
He just saw the camera and walked right away. He's hiding.
He does not like cameras. He's not that. He's camera shy.
Yeah, he looks like he does not like cameras. Let me go back to some of my notes here. So that, by the way, is not the person who Dan Rashbaum walked into court with today. That person was a little heavier set, dark hair, black hair. Not sure who that person was, but Rashbaum walked in with somebody other than Alex Morris this morning. The judge basically said here, after Alex Morris tried to stumble through his answer, the judge said, if Charlie cannot be properly cross-examined, it's a major problem for the client. Then, of course, asking Alex, do you wish for me to examine your client? I mean, Tim, that's obviously legal speak, but when Judge Everett swore her in, that is when the examination begins. By the way, that was Alex Morris who just walked past me back into the same hallway. There he is. That's Alex.
Yeah, he's having a bad day.
He's having a bad day. So, Tim, what does it mean to be examined by a judge? It's different than being examined by a doctor, but Judge Everett did swear her in. So what does that do? That just obviously creates a court record to show that Judge Everett is doing what he is supposed to be doing, correct?
He's doing what's called a court inquiry of the defendant. He's putting them under oath and going to ask questions, and that the court has to be satisfied that the answers are consistent with what needs to be done, that she can adequately, knowingly, and independently give a waiver. And if there's any hesitation, then he will not accept it. And it doesn't. And then he said, have you talked to an independent lawyer about this? And Alex says, no, which is the first key thing. She has to have an independent lawyer give her that advice, because otherwise she's getting same advice from lawyers that have a conflict, and that's not independent. So
just adjusting on the fly here. You see, Counsel,
I had I had a bad
Yep.
feeling last night about this whole thing.
Yeah,
I
by the
know
way, that was
everybody
Dan
wants
Rashbaum. That was Rashbaum, and that may have been Sarah Dugan who
there
just
goes
walked
Alex.
out.
There goes Adam.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Fred. He's
There's
he's not involved. That's my friend Fred Conrad. He's a DUI lawyer.
So there's obviously a little conference room there, and I guess that is where they're speaking, maybe with Donna. Now,
Yeah.
Tim, let me ask you this. Let's assume that Donna waives the conflict. Does Charlie also have to do this in order for this to move forward? Or is this now a problem for them with a Charlie appeal?
I think the judge is now going back there and looking at some case law, and he's looking at the answers he was given by the people. And now he realizes, my gosh, this is worse than I thought. They indicated they had hired independent counsel. They haven't, because he said, when were they hired, right? And he goes, well, we haven't hired them yet. So you're asking a lawyer that hasn't even been hired yet to do cross-examination of a witness on a murder trial in less than 2 weeks. That is ineffective counsel. And a judge knows that's ineffective. He probably couldn't even read the transcripts of the past trial of Charlie and be ready to do cross-examine, not even meeting with his client and learning of their. So I don't see it happening unless Charlie waives. I don't see it happening.
So Tim, I mean, who do you really, I guess, blame for all this? I don't know if that's the right word, but at the end of the day, is this because Dan Rashbaum decided to stay on this case and represent the son and now the mother? Is that really what's at the crux of all this? In other words, if it was another attorney, if it was just Alex Morris with no Dan Rashbaum involved, would we be dealing with all this?
No, that's the reason Dan should not have been on the case. If Dan wanted to get on the case, he should have gotten that waiver over a year ago. He should have got it when she got arrested in December. And that's when he should have got the waiver from Charlie. And we wouldn't have this issue now. But of course, you still have the problem. Charlie can change his mind. It's his privilege. So he can always change his mind. That's why Dan had a conflict. That's why Dan should have never been the lawyer. And if Dan wasn't friends with Donna, calling her every day, talking to her every day, he wouldn't have fought to stay on this case, right? He would not have fought to stay in this case. And it may be the only reason he brought Alex in. He was going to do it again himself, was because of this conflict and thought he could cross-examine Charlie. I mean, that's kind of a guess, but he should not have been the lawyer in this case.
By the way, for those who are just joining, I'm coming to you from outside courtroom 3G in the rotunda of the Leon County Courthouse. Tim Jansen is covering this from Tallahassee. And right now, the issue at hand is Donna has a conflict with the cross-examination potentially of Charlie Adelson. So they're meeting behind closed doors. Initially, Judge Everett said that he was going to reconvene court at 1:15, but after a sidebar with Alex Morris. By the way, Dan Rashbaum was not at that sidebar, but there was a sidebar with Alex Morris, Georgia Kappelman, Sarah Dugan, the bailiff, and the judge. And after that sidebar, Judge Everett came back to the bench and he went and said, we will reconvene court at 10:30. Tim, I know I asked you this earlier, but what's your read into the fact that he moved it up from 1:15 to 10:30 in the morning? Why would he move it up that much?
I think what they told the judge was that the independent lawyer is here. He's going to speak to Donna, and then she's already made her decision, or you can do your inquiry with Donna at 10:15. She can, and I think she'll have that independent counsel that you asked her for. And I think that's why you saw Adam there in courthouse.
Let's look at some questions here. Tirda joining us. She's in the chat often. Will Donna have a better shot at getting out on bond? That's an interesting question. If she chooses a new lawyer and thereby a delay of up to a year, it is a murder one charge, Tim. Any chance she gets out on some sort of bail?
She was fleeing, leaving the country, or going to kill herself. She's not getting bail just because her lawyers made mistakes in their representation. No, zero bond, zero bail.
Look at this there. Tim, your hair looks fantastic. They want you to know. Let me go back. I mean, obviously, this question here, how does it affect her right to a speedy trial? Is, if she does not waive this conflict, she's going to be sitting in jail for, Tim, you said, an attorney could possibly wrap their head around this within 8 months, but she's going to be sitting back in jail for a substantial amount of time.
Well, she has not asserted her speedy trial. She's not requested a speedy trial. And if she has to get a new lawyer, if the new lawyer wants to request speedy trial, then the court will do an inquiry with her again. You understand your lawyer just got hired. You're asking for a speedy trial. You understand you want to waive it. If you waive it, this is not an appellate issue. So I'm not worried about the speedy trial. I think unless Charlie comes in, and don't be surprised if Charlie's lawyer at 1:15 doesn't change his mind. Don't be surprised, because now all the chips are on the table, right? The other side has put all their chips in. Do you have the gumption to tell your mama, you're going to have to get new lawyers and I'm asserting my rights? Is that what Charlie's going to do? I have reservations in that happening.
This begs another question, which I think I know the answer to, from Kathy Barella. Does this change a possible plea deal for Donna? No, right?
Yeah, you can plead to life or we'll go to trial and you get life. Your choice, Donna.
Wow, not sounding good. So listen, obviously, I knew this was going to happen. We had some hiccups all on my end. Tim's been amazing. We are waiting for court to reconvene at 1:30, which is 36 minutes from now. Why don't we just start to take some questions?
10:30.
If you have 10:30, yes, in 36 minutes.
We can do that.
Yeah. Should Judge Everett have required written or on-record waivers from both? Does he hold any weight in this mess? Great question. Tim, one of the lawyers I talked to yesterday on the ride up for Tallahassee said, look, this isn't just about the state and Alex and Dan Rashbaum. It's also about upholding the integrity and the work of Judge Everett. How much responsibility does he bear in all this, in your opinion, keeping in mind you might have to argue in front of him one day?
I have no problems arguing in front of Judge Everett. He's a great judge, smart judge. He's methodical. Could he have missed this issue, or did he not see it rising to the level? That's why lawyers are supposed to bring it to the judge. Judges don't like it when you make them make these decisions when motions could have been brought earlier. Obviously, the best case scenario was, one, Dan didn't represent him. Number two, Dan got a written waiver, told the judge in January or February this could be an issue, and we want this cleared up now so we don't get on the day of trial and there's an issue. I'm sure the judge wishes he had this issue done, but now he's not going to turn away from it now that the issue is right in front of him, right? He's going to handle it the proper way. I think the state probably also should have brought it to the attention. I've seen the state do this in previous cases. They moved to file the motion to force the lawyer because of potential conflict. They want to preserve their conviction. I don't know why they didn't do that in this case if they thought Charlie might be a witness.
What can I tell you? It's just right now a mess as we wait. I'm trying to get in a good position here so you guys can see, because there's action down this hallway here. Some of the attorneys who are working the case are walking down this hall right behind me. So just trying to see if we can catch a glimpse of them at some point.
Well, I can tell you, this is like a car crash, and every lawyer in the courtroom hears what's going on. Every lawyer is going to go there and see what happens, how this plays out.
Lawyers want to know. From Jody Langley here, good question. Why did the state proceed Tim in the first place and get Charlie on the plane to Leon County with no intention to testify? Can Charlie then be charged to reimburse the state? By the way, I mean, Georgia Kaplan said she doesn't plan to call him now, but obviously depending on what he says, if the defense calls him, the state could bring him up or cross-examine him, correct?
Right.
So it's not, go ahead.
You have a car accident, you're in the emergency room, and the doctor looks at you and says, oh, you might have some internal bleeding. I'm not sure. We probably should have a surgeon come in just in case when I open him up, he has internal bleeding. Same thing with here, Georgia. If they get in there and say some new cockamamie defense is not double extortion, they're going to call Charlie to the stand to rebut it. And she's not going to waive that because they didn't get a proper waiver. I don't know if it was gamesmanship or ineptness but it's a problem.
What do you think, by the way? We talked about the judge. We talked about Dan and Alex. We talked about Donna. What is going through the mind of Georgia Kaplan and Sarah Dugan right now? I mean, are they annoyed? Are they angry? Are they upset? This is anything but, a typical routine proceedings. So what are they thinking?
No, they are holding firm. They're not happy about it because they spent a lot of money getting these witnesses here, getting prepared. They're not losing money, right? Because they get paid a salary. So they're going to do this case. If it has to be redone, redone. But they're not going to risk a conviction because of timing. And they believe it was not their fault. They have some dirty hands in this. If they knew they were going to call Charlie, they should have inquired of the court to inquire and have Charlie present to do the waiver, or have the lawyer do the waiver in writing. They probably somehow dropped the ball, but you can't blame them as much as you blame Dan, right? He knew this conflict. I mean, that's when he hired Alex, and Alex said he built up the wall. They knew, and Alex got hired in February or March? They knew this was a problem. Why didn't they get the waiver?
Tim, what sort of authority does the judge have in terms of potentially terminating Dan Rashbaum? What kind of power does he have to do that?
He can I make a finding that there is a conflict that cannot be waived, and I do not feel comfortable moving forward. It's not just the cross-examination, it's the entire representation based on information. And I am conflicting you off. And in abundance of caution, I'm conflicting Alex off because he's been part of the team. I want a clean trial, and we'll reset, and I'll give her 30 days to hire a new counsel, and then we'll do a case management.
Kendra S. here with a question. If it all comes down to whether Charlie signs the waiver, Tim, why are they even bothering to meet with Donna about her waiver? Good point.
It involves, but the problem is the judge is trying to find another solution other than the hammer he's got to put down on Dan, right? He's trying to find another way to have this trial move forward. If he can, he's going to try to, fix the record, at least have her waive so that there won't be a ineffective counsel down the road. And then he's probably going to want to have this independent lawyer come forward at 115. Do you really think you're able to cross-examine? Can you be prepared to cross-examine Charlie should he testify? And any lawyer that says they could is a fool and making a mistake. But that's what he's doing. He's trying to find a way around continuing the trial if Charlie doesn't waive.
Tim, are you able to hear me right now?
I can.
Okay. For some reason, my mic turned orange instead of green, so I have no idea why. By the way, Black Widower here with a shout out to Black Widower. She's making me feel at home, familiar face, but big love to the Markells. If we are stressed, they must be off the charts. I did speak to Ruth yesterday, and she was anxious about all this. I mean, Tim, what kind of added stress / torture is this for the Markel family now? They're scheduled to arrive tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah.
And now everything is up in the air. I mean, what does this do to the family?
It's really stressful for the family. And I try to take it out of the legal and to another people can understand. It's like having to have surgery, right? And then COVID hits and all the hospitals are closed. You get anxious, you get ready, prepared, and then you can't have your surgery. It's got to be redone. You get stressed, and then you got to go through that whole dilemma of getting ready for it, getting ready for this trial. It's not fair to her, to the family, but she wants it done right, right? She wants it done right, and she doesn't want it coming back 5 years from now where Donna gets another trial and she has to redo it again.
This is a fascinating comment, I think, from a young Black economist. My opinion is Donna wants to give Wendy as much time for her sons to get closer to being 18. The implication here is that this is being done on purpose to create some sort of distraction, some sort of delay in the proceedings because they anticipate Wendy's arrest. Is this overthinking it, Tim?
I think it is, because I don't think Donna fully understands waiver. I don't think she fully understood conflict. I think she was just listening to Dan as they were talking to Dan. Man, they obviously been listening, relying on Dan. They thought they had won the case for Charlie. So there's too much representation by Dan. He didn't fully explain to her, I think, this could happen. When you looked at her face when the judge started asking her question, she looked completely distraught that Charlie might have to be removed, right? And it didn't seem like they were removing a lawyer. It looked like they were removing a limb. She is hip tied to Dan for some reason, and it's just terrible.
By the way, Tim, we've talked about this so-called Chinese wall, essentially meaning was Alex Morris shielded from the confidentiality with Charlie Adelson? I mean, I guess my bottom line question, I think I asked you this on the ride to Tallahassee yesterday, is how's there any real way to get an answer to that? How do you really know whether he's shielded himself properly enough? If they haven't even dealt with this issue, how can we trust them on that issue? Well,
as an officer of the court, your reputation is everything, right? And if you tell the court, I've done this, you better have done it. Because if you lie to the court, and if he tells the court, we've shielded, I got an ethical wall, and he doesn't, then he could lose his bar license. And Alex is not going to do that. No lawyer is going to lose their bar license for one individual defendant. But unfortunately, you see people do stuff all the time they shouldn't do. And it's usually for representing friends or family. And that's why you should never represent a friend or a family, because you're not being objective and you're not doing what you're supposed to do as a lawyer.
Yeah. By the way, Eileen, True Crime Junkie, COE, feel free to jump in here. I think Tim and I will keep going with questions. The hearing is, and Judge Everett was early this morning, so I'm assuming he will be right on time. So we're 26 minutes away. I'm sure you guys have plenty of questions. Let's take this to Judge Everett reconvening court to see what happens, and I'll when that happens, I'll run into the courtroom. I'll leave this shot up, and then I will come back. I'll have Steve Cohen man the shot if Steve is listening. Does that sound like a good plan to you, COE? You're the boss.
Yes, that sounds great. And for anyone who missed the previous live stream, we did air the entire hearing. So you can go back and watch that live stream now if you have some time. You can also just stick around here. We are going to be popping up the hearing here in about 25 minutes when court goes back into session, and we will air that in its entirety. We were supposed to have a lunch live, but I don't know what Joel plans on doing.
I think I'm going to stay live throughout my entire trip to Tallahassee for the next 3 weeks.
Very funny.
It will be live 24/7, 365 until I leave Tallahassee. Everyone can snore along with me at night. And no, I don't know. We're going to lunch live. We're going to play that by ear, seeing based on what happens. Again, I want to go into the courtroom at 10:30. If Steve Cohen is listening, which I hope he is, I'm going to go grab him because I'm literally set up in the middle of the rotunda here. And then I'll come back out to this camera shot, and I'll leave this shot up actually while I'm in there. This is
and I just want to address this really quickly. Barley Hops is asking why no live stream in court. There is a live stream right now. They're on a break until 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Right now it's 10:06. So in about 24 minutes, when they put the feedback up, we will air it for you guys here. Joel is going inside, so he will step away, but the rest of us will sit here and we'll watch the hearing on this channel. And then after that, Joel and Tim may or may not give us a quick little breakdown. Joel, if you need a separate lunch live, you need to let us know so we can set it up or stay on here. So just text me.
We will figure that out. And I'll let you know. Tim Jansen, do you think Donna Adelson is too enamored, too enmeshed? That's the word that the Adelsons have been described. The word that's been used to describe the Adelsons. Do you think she's too enmeshed with Dan Rashbaum to make a rational decision here?
Yeah, it seems like their relationship is more than just the attorney-client. And it's kind of hard to give advice to someone like that because you don't want, sometimes you don't want to tell them what they need to hear. You tell them what they want to hear, right? I always tell my clients, I said, listen, if you hire me, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, the good, bad, and the ugly. And they appreciate that up front. But I just don't think Dan has the ability to do that. I think he placates her for her mental health. I think he's done some things here he should not have done. He may have sidestepped or overlooked the conflict that was clear, that everybody knew was clear. And he probably should have done more or alert the court. I was talking to the Democrat reporter last night. I said, I really think this is a big deal. I think this is going to be a problem. And they said, we don't think so. I'm like, okay. I think this is going to be a big problem in the morning.
Well, I just saw Jeff Burlew and told him what you were saying, and he was deferring to you. He says he's not an attorney, he doesn't really know. What about this, Tim, from Vicky Cup? We talked about the onus really being on Dan Rashbaum. Is this the type of thing where he could be reprimanded by the judge or in some way cited by the Florida bar?
Well, now the judge does have the ability. They can refer lawyers to the bar if they think there was a bar violation. If the judge finds any more information that something nefarious took place and something more than just this conflict and they thought they had a Chinese wall, then clearly he could refer it to the bar. The bar can do an investigation. I think that it's going to be something's going to happen. Dan's probably going to have to answer to the bar if this case gets continued and because of his failure to properly recuse himself. I think that's a problem.
Tim, I think this would be an awesome time for you just to take a minute to sort of re-explain to everyone, because people have been coming in at all different times, what is happening right now. Like, what is the issue? It all revolves around Charlie Adelson's appellate attorney filing a motion. I think it was Thursday or Friday. Just walk us through what happened and how we got here.
Well, it appears that in July of this year, the state filed an amended witness list, and Charlie was at the top of it, and they served the subpoena care of Daniel Rashbaum. So as of July 15, 2024, Daniel Rashbaum knew that his previous client was going to be called as a witness in this trial. He apparently took no steps to inform the judge with all these pretrial motions of this issue. Alex did not bring it to the court's attention. No one, the state did not bring it to the court's attention, right? And then the court was not aware of it until yesterday, when the appellate lawyer for Charlie files a notice that he's going to take the Fifth Amendment because of a conflict with Charlie cross-examining him or even Alex cross-examining him. Then Alex Morris filed a response saying, hey, I did the wall. We used to call it a Chinese wall, but I was told yesterday not to call it a Chinese wall. Just call it an ethical wall. That he doesn't know anything, so the privilege is not going to be violated. Well, the court and the law and the bar does not adhere to that being sufficient. So now they have this motion before the court. In Georgia, the state's kind of playing mom, not saying much. It's not really their fight. All she had to say was, we do plan on calling Charlie. Charlie has no Fifth Amendment because they give you immunity, limited immunity with that subpoena. He has to answer questions. Then the cross-examining comes up. Dan cannot cross-examine Charlie. Alex cannot cross-examine Charlie. And Donna cannot cross-examine Charlie. Well, she could. She could say, I'm going to cross-examine my own son. If you want to make this even more crazy, Donna could say, I'm going to do my own cross-examination. That's the only way this could get crazy.
Tim, this is from an attorney who was involved with this case at one point, does not want to be mentioned, basically saying they waited until he was, meaning Charlie, they waited until he was transported here, which, by the way, disrupts everything for him in the prison. And this person says it's not Rashbaum, it's Ufferman. You're telling me you didn't call your client in the prison to discuss that he was on the witness list? He could have filed a motion to quash a subpoena before the issue was raised. You wait until he's transported here. State should just strike him from the witness list and say they are calling him problem solved. What do you make of that?
Well, I agree with them. Prisoners don't like to leave a facility because they get everything all set up. They got visitation, they got their bunk, they got their bunkies. They hate leaving. But you can't penalize the state for the defense and the appellate lawyers' issues. Yeah. Should Offerman have done something? Should Dan Rashbaum in July have called Offerman and say, hey, wait a minute, they've got Charlie listed as a witness. Can you get a waiver from Charlie? Can you call him up and send him a waiver? Can you go see him? That's what should have happened. Offerman should not have waited until Saturday to invoke this. So yeah, Mr. Offerman's going to I would expect the judge is going to ask Offerman, why didn't you bring this to the attention of the court prior to now?
By the way, there's this question here from Daniel Boberson. Why would anyone want to give Dan his performance in Charlie's case and he lost the case? That's an interesting question. But someone else asked him, what are the let's assume that for a moment, and this is a huge assumption, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's just say Judge Everett removes Dan Rashbaum from this case. Does he need to, I mean, this is also, inside baseball stuff, but would he need to reimburse Donna Adelson, or could she potentially sue Dan Rashbaum?
Hey, my associate just walked by. Can you ask her what she's doing over there? She's sitting in the car. I want to make sure she's working.
I love it. She's nabbed. I love it.
Could she sue? It depends on the retainer agreement, right? If it's a flat fee, then they could be refunded. If it's an hourly fee, then he's not going to, the work he's done, he's going to be paid. He's just not going to get any future fee. I imagine it's probably a flat fee that she probably wanted some break. And some of them may say, well, why do you want to hire Dan again? Well, she felt comfortable with Dan. Dan knew the case, and Dan probably charged less because he had less work to do prepared because he knew the case. So he probably came cheaper than another lawyer did, right? and she probably felt comfortable with Dan.
By the way, this is a good question from Jimmy McNutty. Everyone makes fun of me because every time I say his name, I say he's been a trial watcher since OJ, so I will never stop saying that. He's been a trial watcher since OJ. He's coming out to this trial, by the way. Judge Everett threatened Rashbaum with a term that sounded like fulcrum. Can Tim spell the term and explain it? Good question. I have no idea.
It's a good question. It is a good question, but it wasn't that's not the term. He was citing the case. It's called Kolker, Kolker, and that's a 3rd District Court case. Talks about the privilege and the 3 prongs of the privilege. So I think he said, is Kolker involved, or is that bringing Kolker? That's what he was talking about, the case law.
They opened the doors. Okay, that was Katie Cool Lady telling me court doors have just been reopened. People are entering the courtroom. So this is probably going to start a few minutes early or right at 10:30.
There was a comment on here, Joel, that was pretty interesting and said Dan thinks of Donna like his mother. So if you ask me if I would ever represent my mother, the answer would be no. I love my mother. God rest her soul. But I would have independent counsel. I would give advice, but I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be able to be independent and give her the advice she needs. I'd be too emotionally involved. I'd do things I probably wouldn't do. So.
By the way, welcome to everybody. I know there's a lot of new people here. If you're enjoying this content live from the Leon County Courthouse for Donna Adelson's impending murder trial, whether or not it is still going to move forward is questionable at this point. But if you do like the content, please subscribe. If you hate me and Tim Jansen, no one hates Tim, but if you hate me, subscribe twice. And please hit that like button. Please share the show with friends. We're going to be doing shows throughout this trial, assuming it does move forward. Today, we're going to do something from Tim's law firm immediately after. Oh, yeah, don't subscribe twice. That's an unsubscribe. It's like a double negative. So forget that. It's a joke, COE. It's a joke. But we will be doing a show this afternoon from Tim's law firm. And Tim, by the way, has agreed to be a mainstay throughout this trial. We basically will have Tim and Joe Patuto on most nights, and then bring in a 3rd guest to kind of spice it up a little bit. I see Space Coast. He's going to the courtroom feed. They are starting to.
Are we moving again?
You are staying. You're staying, Tim. I'm going to leave
Joel,
Okay.
don't do anything.
I'm going to leave. I'm just going to turn my camera off, guys. I'm going into court, and I will see you on the flip side. Tim Jansen will be here to walk you through court, which is going to reconvene in about 10 minutes. I'm going to hang on for a few minutes with Tim. Once I see Judge Everett, I'll bounce in there. Tim, this question has come up before. Do you think?
Please let everyone know. I see comments. I am not representing Donna. I will not represent Donna in any capacity at any time.
There you go. How about this one? Do you think this is an intentional delay from Donna and Charlie to delay also the justice from reaching Wendy? What do you think?
When she was trying Meg Bonawa, and then they tried Charlie, right? They were taking that leap from the people mostly involved. Then they got to Charlie. Once they reached that hurdle, right, they felt comfortable, circumstantial evidence to go. They went after Charlie. Then they felt even more confidence. Okay, we got Charlie. Now we're going to go after Donna. So don't you think this is a test case? They want to see how this case plays with Donna. And if they are able to secure a conviction within 3 hours of Donna, don't you think they may feel more confident they might bring charges against other family members? And if Donna gets acquitted, do you think they'll bring charges against anybody else? Probably not.
And how about this question, Tim? Interesting. Can Charlie take the 5th since he has a pending appeal? Why not?
He can, but if he does, he'll be held in contempt. And what's the judge going to do? He's got a life sentence already, right? So the judge can hold him in contempt. So in effect, he could say that, but he could say, I'm going to take the 5th, but you don't have a 5th when you're given immunity, right? You just like Wendy. Wendy she could take the 5th. She can't take the 5th. They could hold her in contempt. but she doesn't have charges and doesn't have a life sentence. So effectively, Charlie could say, pound sand, judge.
This too has come up. You're looking at the seal of the great state of Florida as we're waiting for Judge Everett to resume court to see if this trial will be continued or if it will move forward. Continued in legal parlance means it will be delayed or put off. Joseph Anthony, run Joel, I should run. Joseph Anthony just had a question. See how he loves to remove my questions right literally as the question is coming out of my mouth. I'm trying to find it up here. It was
That was a good question that was up there. If they don't let,
if they bump
introduce
Charlie
the
from the
text?
witness list,
Right.
can they still introduce the text? That's a great question from Donna and Charlie that suggested Dan.
If they laid the proper foundation and it was done through a subpoena and the records can come in and say, this is a text message that was sent. It's not as strong as when you have a witness saying, yeah, I sent that text, because you want them to explain it. But will that text get in? Yeah. If it's properly authenticated through business records. Yeah.
How about this, Tim? It's interesting how people come up with these scenarios. Someone is saying that maybe Charlie is doing this to kind of screw Dan over because Dan got him convicted. There's no chance of that, right?
I think that his appellate lawyer is basically telling him, why would you waive this? I wouldn't do it. You might win on appeal. They might ask you some questions on here that can make you look bad that you answer, that could affect your next trial. So if I were you, I wouldn't waive it. And I can see Mike Ufferman telling him that. He's a very cautious lawyer.
By the way, no offense to Debbie, but I thought this was Danny for a moment. And I got excited, but it's Debbie Glover, not Danny Glover. Tim Jansen, just taking a half step back. You've been practicing law, I think 38 years or something around that.
Yep.
When's the last time you saw something like this happen right before on the eve of a murder trial?
You don't see this. This never happens because any kind of conflict like this is taken care of much earlier. It would never be like this. Especially a significant case like this. It's brought to the attention because it's a high profile case, and it's brought to the attention because one lawyer is independently representing his client, right? Mike Ufferman saying, no, I'm not going to waive. I'm going to protect your rights. That's what I'm going to do. And we'll see what Donna says after she's had so-called independent counsel. I'd be shocked if after having independent counsel, she's willing to let some lawyer that hasn't been appointed, hasn't looked at anything, do the cross-examination. I find that hard to believe.
I think Rashbaum was going to be history. That was the comment. What's your gut tell you right now, Tim? Is he going to be off this case, do you think?
Unless Charlie waives and Charlie comes in the courtroom and his lawyer comes in and says he's changed his mind, he's willing to waive, I don't think that Dan can stay on the case. I think Alex will get off, and I think they're going to have to get new lawyers.
By the way, the courtroom is 9 feet from where I'm standing. I don't have to, I can walk in there once Judge Everett sits down, so I will have no problem, as far as I know, getting in there. Jimmy McNutty, citing the state case law, Colker versus State 94-18. I'm not going to call you a nerd, Jimmy McNutty, but you're a legal nerd. Can Alex defend if Rashi drops? What about this? Are they both gone, or can one stick around, Tim?
I think that the case law and to make it clean. If you're going to continue the trial, why would you not give a good clean, right? Why would you do surgery and not clean the wound out completely before you sew it up? So I think the judge, if he's going to move the trial, he's going to disqualify both.
This is just kind of mind-blowing. Was someone sobbing in the courtroom? I don't believe so. If they were doing it quietly. You're actually not supposed to be crying in there, so they would have probably asked that person to step away. This last-minute drama, thankfully, is being covered by STS. You have all navigated us through this mess. Thank you, RJ. Appreciate that. Prayers for the Markells. And again, my apologies. I previously ended the stream. I will not do that this time around. Does anyone, thank you so much, Neuropsych Zena, but the question is, does anyone benefit from this situation? Tim, what's the bottom line answer? I mean, in a I don't know, in a perverted sort of way, does Donna benefit from this, or Charlie?
The only person that benefited so far are those jurors that got called this morning and got released.
By the way, speaking of that, what happens with that pool of jurors who is here? Are they going to be the same jurors who possibly come back this afternoon?
No, they're released. They're good. They're good for 2 years.
They're good. They're done. That's it. So
Yeah.
once they're here, okay. So then let's assume that this does move forward. When would and they do jury selection? They bring in. How did they get all these new jurors to the courtroom for this afternoon?
Well, they've
There's all
got them
this-
coming in panels. This is what they did. They got maybe they got 150 coming in, then 150, another 150. They might have 150, 150, 150 tomorrow too. So they might have 600 or 700, 750 jurors coming in the next 2 days.
Tim, what about the logistics of, there's talk about bringing Charlie into the courtroom today to sign this, to physically, does he have to do it in front of the judge? That's question number one. The second question is, logistically, how tough is it? How quick can they get Charlie Adelson over here?
Those deputies can get Charlie Adelson there by 1:15. That's probably why. And no, he doesn't have to sign anything if he takes a witness stand and swears under oath, and his lawyer is present, and he's going to go through the whole thing. You've talked to your lawyer, you understand. You've had this filing. Now you've decided to change your mind. We're not going to have you change your mind again. This is a final decision, and if you do this now, you're not going to have the chance to change it again after this trial starts. Then I think the judge will feel comfortable with moving forward.
Wesley John Holmes, an Aussie living in Tokyo. I'll be crying in a minute if this is stopped. About 4 minutes away from Judge Everett, who's usually, there you go, he's early. Tim, I'm going to turn the camera off. You stay on. I'm just turning the camera off. I'll be back.
Let's see what happens.
Let's pick back up where we were earlier. I believe Ms. Adelson was consulting with independent counsel on that matter. Has she had sufficient time to do so?
Judge, I think I'll let independent counsel, Mr. Commissar, speak to that.
Mr. Commissar?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, just for your awareness, I've been involved in this since yesterday. She has had a chance.
Welcome.
She has had a chance to speak with me. She's in a position where she would not like to lose Mr. Rashbaum. She's willing to make any waivers that are necessary. She's not seeking a continuance, and she's fine with currently unprepared counsel conducting the cross-examination of Mr. Adelson should he be called.
Well, let's go ahead and finish the colloquy that we started earlier concerning the waivers.
This is absolutely crazy and bad decision by Donna.
Ms. Adelson, if you can stand once again, you have already been sworn. Now that you've had the opportunity to discuss with Mr. Commissar the issues that are related to the conflict of Mr. Rashbaum, and also any issues as it would relate to proceeding forward under these circumstances, are you in fact waiving any conflicts regarding Mr. Rashbaum?
Yes, sir.
Do you also waive any issue on a future appeal regarding the issue of your son's cross-examination, as it pertains both to the preparation of any counsel who would perform that cross-examination, or the fact that it may not be adequate representation?
Yes.
You may be seated. Does the state have anything to raise concerning this matter at this point?
Just that the state is in agreement with proceeding as outlined by defense counsel. In the limited research I was able to do on the issue, it seems like a lot of the times when it goes the other way and the court in its discretion decides to boot the counsel of record for conflict, the state is seeking that. So I just want to put on the record that we are not seeking for your honor to do that in this situation.
To dismiss Mr. Rashbaum.
Correct.
Very well. I'm going to perform my additional research before we continue this afternoon concerning whether or not this waiver is sufficient. The defendant has made it She has made it voluntarily. At the same time, whether it is sufficient to survive any review, that is really where my mindset is at this point. Unless any other party has something to raise, we'll be in recess and get started again at 1:30.
Judge, as Ms. Nile has been speaking with her during the break, is she and Mr. Upperman are meeting with Mr. Adelson, because the question has arisen as to whether or not there's a conflict as it relates to cross-examination, or if Mr. Adelson were to have a continued objection to his representation, continued representation of Ms. Adelson. I think that there's some thought that that needs to be confirmed from Mr. Adelson first, because if he takes a different position, it would seemingly disqualify Mr. Ashbaum altogether. That's going to be accomplished. I wanted to let the court know that that's in the works.
Good.
Also, as it relates to the waiver, so the court was aware, and there's mention of it in the comments section of the rules regulating the profession, that an oral waiver is acceptable and appropriate with certain conditions that are set forth in the rule.
Is the attorney who obtained the waiver available to speak on this matter?
I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I'm pretty certain, I say within 99% certainty, we'll facilitate it.
Go ahead.
Does Your Honor need, that's why I'm mentioning this. Should I, excuse me, Judge.
Signature was obtained by me, and then an independent waiver did not get a signature. He could testify as an independent waiver.
Does Your Honor feel like you need to hear from him?
So we have a fully developed record? Yes.
Okay, let me make arrangements during the break, and I'll alert chambers as to how quickly we can do that, so we don't waste time this afternoon if possible.
Please do.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to have the afternoon jurors report at 2 o'clock, so that way no one's time is wasted while we're going through these matters. Mr. Commissar, you had something else to add?
Yes, Your Honor. Just as we're talking about perfecting a record, I just wanted to note that as the independent counsel, I was given an opportunity by the court to meet with her independently. The bailiffs gave us some privacy here. I was able to meet with her for easily 30 minutes. And I'm not revealing any of our confidences, but this was not a squishy situation. Once I was able to articulate the options and how they can result in delay or the opportunity to prepare, this, I can say, was a strategy decision that is being made by a defendant who does not want to delay their case, but understands that the representation they're going to get from my cross-examination is not what they might get from another lawyer, or definitely not what they're going to get from me with a year of preparation. So it may look odd in a cold record having a lawyer come in this morning and advise somebody to waive such an important right. I was able to articulate the options, but I did not necessarily advise somebody to waive their rights.
Very well. Mr. Morris, do you wish the court to engage in any further colloquy with Ms. Adelson concerning this matter?
Not at this point, Judge.
Very well. Ms. Adelson, I do not want you to respond, but I want you to understand, although you have made an affirmative waiver on these matters, I still have to evaluate whether that waiver is sufficient or whether Mr. Rauschbaum needs to be terminated from this matter. I'm going to give this serious consideration. I will do additional research of my own from there. Everyone will have an answer this afternoon. We are in recess until 1:15. Please come back to the courtroom at that time.
Judge, would you be open to both sides submitting case law for your consideration during the recess?
Certainly.
So this is so now we know this is a real problem. The independent lawyer that was giving her advice whether she should have a third party come do the cross-examination is the same lawyer that's going to get paid to do the cross-examination. So is he really independent, or is he really just trying to get on the case? Probably should have been an independent lawyer that has nothing to do, has no incentive, that would protect her from making a bad decision. Clearly, Adam is indicated that he would be the one doing the cross-examination. So how much is he really going to give her independent evaluation, whether or not she should allow him, as he said, doesn't have any knowledge of the case and has not seen anything, be able to give adequate representation. It's just everything. If I was a judge, I would not allow, I would remove, I'd continue the trial. That's me, but I'm conservative and I want to protect her rights to a fair trial, her rights to lawyer, independent counsel. It's just foolish. They're just doing the same thing different ways. It's just crazy. Joel, I was just saying, now Adam, who used to work for me, gets up there and says, I did an independent colloquy in 30 minutes, letting her know, but he's going to be the one that's going to be hired to do the cross-examination. So how independent is he, and how hard is he going to fight back with her waiving that when he's going to get paid to do the cross-examination?
And it's definitely him who's going to do the cross. That's a great point.
That's what he said.
Yeah. I got to say, I'm sure he's a fine attorney, but he looks extraordinarily nervous in there. Just his, he's rubbing his hands together. He's kind of like running his fingers through his hair in a nervous, anxious sort of manner. So it was interesting to watch that. Donna, once Judge Everett just adjourned court till 1:30, she immediately turned to Dan Rashbaum. There's obviously concern. But Tim, this is exactly what you were just saying. Adam Commissar basically said to Judge Everett, look, I spoke with her for 30 minutes, which is not a very long amount of time. And I told her about her rights and what she possibly faces, in terms of consequences. And he said that she does not want to give up the speedy trial. Dan Rashbaum just walked out. Dan is looking understandably nervous. He looks concerned.
The judge should basically say, okay, I've heard her say she wants to do this waiver and have a third party come in if I find there's a conflict. But then I also heard you spent 30 minutes with her. Then I also heard you tell her that you're going to be the one that's going to be doing the cross-examination. You're the one that's going to get paid. You're the one that's going to come in, either getting publicity or getting paid. So you really aren't independent counsel. You have a bias. So she doesn't really have an independent person who's giving her advice for 30 minutes whether to get a lawyer to do cross-examination. The court should not find that's a knowing and intelligent waiver at all.
Tim, what do you make of the fact? I mean, Judge Everett, by the way, is just an unbelievably good judge, and just even the terminology. He asked if Alex Morris wanted to soliloquy any further. I love that. You saw, by the way, at the end, Georgia got up and said, is it okay if we present case law to you after lunch at 1:30 today? Tim, what do you do right now if you're Georgia in terms of case law? What is she looking for in case law to show Judge Everett?
Well, she wants to go forward with the trial. And she's got some dirty hands also, because she should have brought this issue up a long time ago. And I understand she's subpoenaed everybody. The docket's here. The people are here and they're ready to go and their witnesses are ready to go. And she's concerned if you delay, I might lose witnesses. That's understandable. But she knows deep in her heart, she has to know that this isn't a proper waiver. This wasn't an independent evaluation. This is a 30-minute job telling her, hey, I'm going to do cross-examination. I can do this really well. And you don't want to continue this, do you? No, I don't want to continue. Okay, yeah. So judge, she doesn't want to continue it. Get an independent lawyer going there who's going to basically protect their rights and say, listen, this lawyer may not be ready to do cross-examination. He may not have seen anything. You really want to cross-examine someone that might undercut your entire case if he hasn't seen anything and your trial starts tomorrow? That's not a knowing waiver.
By the way, I've been around a lot of legal commentators, including having worked for Dan Abrams. I'll say this. I don't think there's a better legal commentator in the country than Tim Jansen, who's able to break it down just very easily for the rest of us to understand. Look at this. Here's another one who comes close. This is Joe Patuto. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hi.
How are you? Joe Patuto, the professor.
Hey, Joe, what we were worried about yesterday is happening.
I know. Yes. I cannot believe it. I wouldn't believe this if this was a movie that I was watching, much less a real trial going on. What does Rashbaum have that Donna is willing to say she accepts what on the record they say will be an unprepared lawyer doing the cross-examination of Charlie?
No, it's better. It's worse than that, Joe. The lawyer that gave her the independent counsel spent 30 minutes with her, and he's the same one that's going to be hired to do the cross-examination.
I know, I heard you say that. It seems to me they're playing high stakes poker and they're still gambling that Georgia will not call Charlie on direct and that some of this will go away because of that. But it's just unbelievable to me. Unbelievable.
Georgia
Hey,
should have
Joe
stood up.
Patuto, real quick, just from an aesthetic standpoint, give your little lens a wipe on your computer because you got a little smudge going on and too attractive to be smudged up. Just wipe the
please.
lens. Come on, wipe the.
I did. That's the best we're going to get, I think.
All right, Joe. Attitude. I love it.
No, I did. I tried.
Yeah. Hey, Joe Patuto, let me ask you this because I asked Tim Jansen this. In your career, which spans, I think, back to 1973 when you became a law professor, do you recall 74? What's 1 year? But do you recall seeing something like this before such a high-profile murder trial?
Never. I don't. I mean, I listened to the feed this morning, Tim, and from July, I just do not understand as a lawyer when you have notice of a problem at least by July, and you're taking steps to respond to it, that at that point you don't immediately let the judge know. It's just, it's incomprehensible to me just to protect yourself that you would take that step. And to sit there and do nothing, it's like a little ticking time bomb ready to go off. And he did.
Hey, Joe, your next exam question in one of your classes is to give this hypothetical and see how they would handle it.
You remember, Tim, I said last night that I expected the Florida bar to put this on one of their little training programs at the annual meeting. And I said that before this morning happened. Unbelievable.
I guess Katie is reporting that Charlie might have been transported over here. I've not seen him. I do not know that. By the way, I got to say it again. I've been covering stories since 1996, and the people, usually it's a real, pardon my French, a pain in the ass. But the people of Tallahassee are just so nice, and I'm talking about the media personnel here, very laid back, but they expect professionalism, which everyone is acting professionally. But there's always a bazillion rules, and you can't do this. And look, they're just letting me go live here in the hallway. There are no jurors up here. I'll be very aware of that, cognizant of that. Once that happens this afternoon, I will turn the camera around. But I just want to give a shout out to the Leon County Courthouse for being cool and their professionalism. From Alaska to Pro-Po, that's Professor Patuto. If the trial goes on, these shenanigans are on record. This should help with appeals, ? Joe, will this help potentially with a Charlie Adelson appeal?
Well, with Charlie's appeal, what will help with appeals is that the record is very clear that every I was dotted and every T was crossed. The fact that some of this is exposed doesn't help with an appeal unless everything that's done now responds appropriately. I agree with Tim. It seems to me having a delay in this trial is the last thing anybody wants. Donna doesn't even want it. But it seems to me the only real way to get out of this is to get the lawyers off and start fresh, because there's always a sort of an issue sitting there. It's like a pimple that you can't, you can, whatever you do with a pimple, open it, but it can reappear on you. So I don't know. And I don't think, Tim, you talked about the appellate lawyers talking to Charlie. I mean, they can certainly advise him of where this trial stands at this point. But the last thing they should be doing is advising him to waive his privilege. It's not in his best interest to waive that privilege, period, in my view.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I don't see this trial going forward. I think Georgia should have stood up after a commissary said I spent 30 minutes with her. that I'm going to be doing the cross-examination. She should have said, say, wait a minute, judge, that's not independent. If he said he spent 30 minutes with her and he is going to get paid and get hired to do the cross-examination, how independent is that? How much did he fight to make sure he got hired? Right? And how much?
Yeah. By the way, look at this. We'll get to this in a minute, Joe. The only clear path forward is Dan's ouster. I want to get your take on that, but look at this comment. I had a jury summons yesterday from Mrs. Mouseling for this trial. They took the first 50 people up, and after a couple of hours, they dismissed the rest of us. They had their panels from the first 50 jurors. Interesting. Joe Patuto, is the only path forward to eliminate Dan Rashbaum from the equation?
I think the only completely safe path forward is to eliminate both Dan and Morris and begin again. That's the only way to get all of these looming issues resolved in a way that there can be a viable appealable issue, with the possible exception of Donna insisting she wants a speedy trial. And I don't know how that assertion by her that she wants a speedy trial and is willing to waive factors in this decision about what to do. I mean, that's another concern. She's entitled to a speedy trial. She's asserting the right to a speedy trial. And she's saying at the same time, I'm willing to waive any obstacle that's in front of me that is impeding my opportunity to have a speedy trial.
By the way, I'm making an executive decision with the COE here. We will go live now for a little while longer. We'll take some questions. We'll get Joe Patuto's take on all this. And then we'll come back for the resumption of this hearing at 1:30. That's how we'll do it. So this is in essence our lunch live right now for today, just an extended lunch live, which is in the morning live, heading into the afternoon live. To Tim from Cassandra, why would Charlie agree to testify at all? It's not like they can do anything effective to him. If he doesn't, he's in jail for life. It's a good question, Tim. Why play along if you're him?
Well, he gets immunity with the subpoena. He could say, I'm asserting the fifth. Judge can go, I'm going to hold you in contempt and I'm going to give you a contempt. I'm going to give you a sentence. Well, the one reason is because maybe Charlie thinks he's going to get a new trial and get overturned and be acquitted. So he doesn't want to get contempt, but that's not likely. So he could come in and say, I'm not going to testify, Judge. I'm taking the fifth. His lawyer would have to tell the judge that outside the presence of the jury that he's going to invoke the fifth, and then he'll hold him in contempt, and then the state won't be able to call him.
Moms from Justice, this is a sad question for Tim. If both Charlie and Donna are at the courtroom, which they may be right now, would they be allowed to see each other, Tim? What is the law on that?
Well, they're separatees, so they would be separate. There's female and the male, so they would probably separate them in different cars. They might be in the same holding cell. Hopefully, they'll probably separate them in a separate. Every floor has a holding cell, so I don't know.
So there's a holding cell on this floor I'm on, Tim?
Yeah, there's a holding cell up there. Yeah, I believe there is. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. To Joe Patuto from Annie K. How is it Dan is not being sanctioned already? Isn't this malpractice? Is it crossed over to that?
Well, excuse me. It doesn't have to be malpractice for you to be sanctioned. The issue is whether you've done something that in the judge's eyes merits a sanctioning. But I don't think the judge is going to do anything while this trial is still potentially going forward. Because if it's going to go forward with Dan Rashbaum, certainly you don't want to taint the jury's view of the case by learning that the attorney has been sanctioned. So I would assume that anything that's going to happen will happen either after the trial is concluded or at worst in camera and not reported until the trial is over. But I would expect them to just hold off on it.
Joe Patudo, we kind of just brought this up, but I guess this is being asked in a different way. Could Charlie sign the waiver and then plead the fifth on the stand? Is that another scenario?
Well, if he's got a privilege against self-incrimination because his case is still officially open, it's on appeal. And therefore, he cannot be required to testify unless he gets immunity. Immunity takes care of the Fifth Amendment privilege, and then he has no right not to testify. He's then in the same situation you or I would be if we were called as a witness. We can't say we don't want to testify because it's inconvenient or because we have a better view of what should happen. That's the legal theory. But the practice is you have a living, breathing person who is, whether rightly or wrongly, is still autonomous. He should not be on the stand if he's going to take the Fifth Amendment. Typically, that's handled before a witness gets on the stand. And if you're going to say you're going to assert your Fifth Amendment right, then you don't get on the stand. You don't want the jury to be affected and maybe taint the right to a fair trial of the defendant, in this case, Donna. I can't imagine that he would get on the stand and then assert. But, I couldn't imagine half of what I've seen in the last few days in this trial. So I'm not going to say, anything is off the table. But he shouldn't. The rules are he cannot do it. If he gets on the stand, he's going to testify. And if he gets on the stand, so long as the question is relevant to this trial, he's got an obligation to answer and answer truthfully. He can't pick and choose.
Here's another wild scenario that has been talked about. If Charlie waives his privilege, could Dan become a potential witness? We know he was on one of those jailhouse calls. Tim Jansen, what do you think of that? I mean, that's been a question that's been looming for a long time. Oh, I think you're muted, Tim.
A lawyer cannot be a witness in the same trial. He's a lawyer. They refuse to do that. It's contrary to the instructions. When a judge says the lawyers are not evidence, what the lawyers say is not evidence, then you would call him as a witness, then he would be evidence. So no, they don't let lawyers be witnesses in cases that they're the active lawyer. And I think that's been already determined. That's not going to happen. And Donna waived that many times on the record.
Tim Jansen from Tia Bawa, who's in here often. Do the prosecutors have anybody advising them? Is Jack Campbell involved in what's happening right now?
He is. I saw Eddie Evans, his number two person who does their legal research up there. I saw him sitting behind Sarah the last moment. So they have people doing legal research behind the scenes for him.
By the way, I saw Jason Newland come in at the very end. He's the SAO investigator.
Yep.
Why would he be? He was there talking to Georgia. It looks like he kind of rushed in there. Is there a reason he'd be in there, Tim?
Yeah, he's probably sending messages from the elected state attorney, Jack Campbell, how he wants them to proceed. And so Jack's not running down there making it look like a scene like they're nervous. So they'll send messages through Jason Newland.
And then to Joe Patudo, why in the world would Georgia want this trial to go forward knowing full well it could be overturned?
Well, number one, I assume that the advice that she's getting is that if the record is cleaned up, there will not be a substantial chance of it being overturned. And secondly, she's prepared to go. Her witnesses are there. All your instincts are to go forward. You've got to fight against the instincts to be able to step out and make an independent, objective decision when you're in the middle of this. And she wants to go. She's ready. I can fully understand why she's saying what she says.
Tim, right now, Judge Everett is weighing what he wants to do with Dan Rashbaum. He made that really clear. So what is he doing? He said he was going to look at case law. This is where I am a total novice, totally do not get it. How do you even know where to begin? It's probably a question for the professor. We'll get her take too. But Tim, how does Judge Everett know where to even start to look in terms of case law to figure out whether or not Rashbaum stays on?
Well, I can tell you what he is doing. He's probably contacting the chief criminal judge. He's probably contacting the chief judge and any other judges in there that have had this issue that did criminal law. getting their advice, getting their wisdom, and then looking, and then he's going to make a decision because, all these judges have had issues that have come forward and they've researched that he may not have. So I can see him asking the other judges and the chief judge what he should do, what they would do, what kind of record, is it enough, or should I just declare disqualification?
Yeah.
Mm.
And I will add that I think that's certainly the responsible thing to do. He's also, and I saw somewhere just in the last few minutes ago that Georgia asked if they could submit case law. What he's going to rely on, he'll have his clerk look, but the parties will look for case law that's relevant and that assists at least the position they're making. So to the extent he said he's going to be looking at law, he's going to be assisted by the cases that they bring forward.
Sri Laura says, just keeping me honest here, that Judge Everett said we would resume at 1:15, so we will do that. We're going to go a little bit longer since Joe Patuto just entered the building like Elvis. Joe Patuto, what's your
I
gut
saw
instinct?
Elvis once. It was terrific at Madison Square Garden. It was sold out.
Wow. Well, can I ask you what year that was? And I'm jealous.
Oh, I don't know. It was towards the end. When did he die? It was at the very end of his
70,
career.
I think 77 or 78.
Maybe that was it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, who else can talk true crime and Elvis other than Surviving the Survivor? Joe Patuto, you're the professor. You know everything. Your knowledge is unlimited. Does this trial continue? Not will it be continued, but does it move forward? Will we see the start of jury selection this afternoon? By the way, everyone is gone now, so my voice is echoing, and I feel like I'm alone in the courthouse. But go ahead, Joe.
I know that Judge Everett is interested in getting a trial done in an expeditious fashion. The jury, as I understand it, there's another panel that's coming in at 2, another group. And so if they can get this issue resolved to his satisfaction and he concludes the trial is good to go, then I assume that they'll start with the jury selection at 2 this afternoon. If I may, Joel, I have a question for Tim, and that is, assuming this trial goes forward, what do you think the impact on the jury will be to have some lawyer come in to do one cross-examination and then leave?
So what would happen? I would assume if the judge allows this, Adam Kamazar will sit at the table. Right. He'll sit separately a little farther down. He'll have no communication with Alex and anybody. He'll be like the odd man out. And they'll introduce him as counsel, so they won't say he's coming in to do that. That's how they'll handle it. It's not clean, and it's going to look weird. The jury's going to see he's not talking to him at all. And that's why you don't do this. It just jurors will see something hinky's going on.
Even now, he's sitting in a row behind Dan and Alex, and he kind of looks like, if I didn't know, I would think he was, a paralegal who was just there in case they have a question or something they need done. But I assume that Tim is right, that they're going to keep him, behind the 2 of them and Donna. But Tim, obviously, to that point, they can't tell the jury because that would taint the jury, right? So this is just, they're going to try to make it seem like it's SOP when it's not, right, Tim?
Right.
Yeah.
They'll find a way to, just like they're going to try to prevent them from knowing she's in custody, bringing her in before they get there and having her sit down with no shackles, and then she leaves after the jury leaves.
Cauliflower here, love the name. So they can all waive their rights, Joe Patuto, and can they then go back later and say, no, I didn't mean to do that, I want a new trial? Once you waive your rights, what does it do to you legally moving forward, in terms of any sort of potential appeal?
Yeah, in theory, you cannot then on appeal, having waived the right, assert it, but that's in theory. And with some waivers of some rights, courts are very, very careful to protect the defendant's interests. And in this case, if it goes forward, and Charlie is called on the state's case, and there is a cross-examination. And then she wants to say on appeal, I was not given effective assistance of counsel because this was a bad cross-examination. On that one, I would guess, and it's only a guess, that an appellate court would wrestle with it, but not recognize that claim from her. On the other hand, there are other ways that this could develop at trial. Charlie might get on the stand, and then Charlie, being Charlie, refuse to answer some questions. And that would still be within the scope of the waiver that she made, but it would not be within what one would expect to happen when the witness gets on the stand. That one, I think, if it went on appeal, my guess would be might lead to a different result. I mean, there's no way that I know, there's no way that a waiver of this sort of right, when it hinges on being effectively represented at trial, that waiver is going to be seen by an appellate court to be an effective waiver, notwithstanding any way the trial develops in any particular consequences of what happens at trial. In theory, it should, but theory is not practice sometimes.
So, Joel, I'm just getting word from reliable sources that there was a problem in the first instance that with the waiver that when Dan represented him. Then Charlie realized through lawyers that his counsel was ineffective during the first trial. So that waiver, not only is that waiver going to be void, but now Charlie has no love for Dan because he's going to use the ineffective counsel as part of his position. That's why this is happening. I'm not sure what the problem with the first waiver was, but this is the words I'm getting.
Kim, what was the first waiver?
Apparently that's what I'm trying to find out.
Okay.
I'm trying to get
I'm not alone in not following this.
Yeah. Are you guys, you're hearing me still, right? I just are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Take headphones off to see if feedback is better. Are you still hearing feedback?
No.
Not now.
Okay. I apologize. I'm in this big hallway and there's, media equipment all around that could be causing it. I just hit a button that I think might be filtering it out.
So I'm reading
Tim.
between the lines of a source that gave me this. There is a problem with the waiver in the first instance that Dan has represented exists. Then there's Charlie realization through lawyers that his counsel was ineffective at trial.
But Joe Patuto, isn't that welcome, Hot Coffee Chats? Love new people here. Please share the show with a friend. Please subscribe if you like what you're watching. Joe Patuto, isn't that just kind of a default mechanism for appellate attorneys to cite ineffective assistance of counsel? Isn't that like kind of a go-to measure or no?
Well, it's often raised, sometimes on appeal, more often probably on a collateral attack, that is after the appeals run, and then a defendant, now convicted person, still thinks he's got a challenge. You then challenge the first trial. An ineffective assistance comes up, I think, more frequently there than on the appeal route, but it can come up in either place. Because the issue is, if there are no errors that would warrant a reversal of a conviction that happened at trial, the only thing you have left is saying, my lawyer did something that resulted in, or could have done something that would have given me an appealable issue. Or alternatively, if there are some errors, but the appellate court says they don't raise to a reversible error, you say, gee, but if my appellate court, if my trial lawyer had done it right, these errors would not have occurred in the first instance, and I wouldn't have been convicted. So you are right, Joel, it is the last refuge of the convicted.
I apologize again for the feedback. I don't know why that's happening. We'll work on it. This is an unbelievable scenario from Paul Escardiz. Georgia wants the trial to go forward because she wants to get working on Wendy's indictment, and then we'll all find out Wendy completes the trifecta and hires Dan Rashbaum. Would that ever be allowed, Tim Jansen? Would Wendy ever be allowed to hire Dan Rashbaum in this? If she wasn't,
I don't think I think she's smarter. I mean, she wouldn't do that. Not especially not at all. So here's a scenario that I'm hearing that Dan reads over the phone to Charlie about this waiver. Charlie discusses with an independent lawyer. No witness, no waiver ever signed. So Dan may have discussed it with Charlie. Charlie doesn't sign anything. Charlie meets with an independent lawyer, and there's no written and there's no oral waiver. That's where we are. And now the new lawyer, Offerman, basically saying there is no waiver, and we're not waiving it.
Joe Patuto, it's kind of leading me to someone saying it's not the feedback, it's the I am right by the elevator, which is sort of inevitable because it's in the middle of the rotunda. I'll try to find a quieter spot.
Oh, this gets worse.
Go ahead, Tim. By the way, Tim is breaking news here live every few minutes on SGS. The man with sources
allegedly signed his own waiver for Charlie to indicate it happened.
Dan signed it?
What does that mean?
And
what do you mean? He signed it for Charlie?
And
what does that mean?
This person believes that Dan is getting removed.
I just want to caution everybody that Tim is getting this from sources, not always 100% accurate. But
right, I haven't confirmed this, but pretty accurate.
Tim is saying, but Tim, explain that to Joe and myself. What does that mean? Does that mean that
means he could have talked to him on the phone, heard it on the phone, and then Dan memorialized his conversation and dated it and signed it, but he didn't have the signature of Charlie, right? Dan signed his own waiver for Charlie to indicate it happened. And then the last thing was
essentially, isn't it what Morris said when he said the waiver was partially oral, partially written, and then when he had to explain it, the waiver part of it was all oral, but what was in writing was the circumstances. It seems to me that's what I heard him say.
That's exactly is right. And that this person believes that Dan's going to be removed.
Joe Patuto, how big a cluster is this for Dan Rashbaum right now?
I think it's a big one. I mean, waiver of a right to a lawyer is a big deal. And getting it this messed up when you've got a big deal where you know it's a big deal is, I don't want to, I'm going to be careful. Yes, it's a cluster and it's a big one. And I don't know, I don't know why. I didn't understand it. I mean, I heard Tim this morning and I agreed with him this morning. I didn't understand from the outset why they were so intent on Rashbaum doing this trial. It was a bad idea for the client. It was a bad idea for the lawyer. And when you have bad ideas and you go anyway, you are making a decision eyes wide open. That's a bad decision. It's like sitting at a stop sign, seeing all the traffic coming and say, hey, I can manage to get through if I have my fingers crossed and I speed and I make a left turn and a right turn. And the likelihood of a collision is pretty high.
Yeah. We keep talking about Dan and Alex, and I've asked this again, but I want to ask Joe Patuto, where does the onus lie on the appellate attorney who filed this Thursday or Friday? Should he be taking heat as well for the way he approached this? He knew full well that Charlie was subpoenaed as a witness. He's been his appellate attorney for months on end. So does he bear any onus for what is happening here?
Well, I asked that last night, and Tim said, that the appellate lawyer is a very good lawyer, responsible lawyer, an ethical lawyer. And then what I heard this morning, although I came on a little late, in terms of the sequencing of when the appellate attorneys felt that they were fully put on notice. And once that happened, I think they said Thursday or Friday, they filed that motion on Monday. So I don't know that I would say it's the appellate lawyers, given what the lawyer this morning said. I think it fully falls on the defense because it's their obligation in the first instance, it's their obligation in the second instance to alert the judge. And then after that, maybe both the state and even maybe in a sense, Judge Everett, for not recognizing clearly what the underlying issues might be and vetting them more. But even then, as I recall those hearings, and of course this morning I certainly didn't have time to listen to Tim and the hearing and go back to listen to those two times on the record where Judge Everett explored the privilege with Donna. But as I recall, he went through the questions with her with regard to Vietnam and the flight, and inquired whether she had independent advice, and she said yes. And I'm not sure that one should answer independent advice if the advice came from co-counsel who had been added to the defense. I was frankly surprised if I heard it right. Then I was surprised at that answer, because if the answer had been, well, somebody on the defense team did it, maybe there might have been a little exploration at the time. But I do think what happened in part, because I was assuming that the initial waiver went to everything. Tim corrected me last night. He was clearly correct. I think the state made the same assumption. I think Judge Everett might have made the assumption, and they were not alerted by the defense to enough of what was going on to maybe ask them more pointed questions.
Tim, one of the questions that is coming up is, and Judge Everett looked none too pleased with Dan Rashbaum, so it might not be a surprise if he releases him from this case, but then does it move forward with Alex Morris as the primary or lead counsel? There's no other co-counsel. Could Alex take the reins?
Did you notice that Dan did not speak today? Dan did not
Yes.
stand up today. Dan is probably more worried about his practice and his reputation, sitting back and having poor Alex have to jump in here and try to do this, bring in some third-party lawyer to try to say that they can be ready to cross-examine a murder suspect in a murder case in less than 2 weeks. This is nonsense. And it was Dan's responsibility. Dan dropped the ball. Dan didn't inform the court. Dan didn't comply with the rules of the Florida bar. And now we have a trial going to be continued. You got a judge who's trying to move forward on a murder trial, and he's got no option but to release him. It's just terrible all around. And Alex is a very ethical lawyer. Very ethical lawyer.
From Kathy Ashby here, I can't figure out what kind of crazy world I'm living in. Every day, I'm gobsmacked, what a great word, by ridiculous, outrageous behavior. Is it me? No, it is not just you. I can guarantee you that. Joe Patuto, we'll take a few more questions. I'm going to treat myself to an extra long lunch today, having slept about 7 minutes last night after an 8-hour drive to Tallahassee. We're going to come back at 1:15, which is about 2 hours away, for the resumption of court, and to see what, if anything, happens to Dan Rashbaum and or Donna Adelson and or Alex Morris and or Georgia Kaufman and or Sarah Dugan and or Judge Everett, because there's so many things happening right now, so many plates in the air. And I agree with this. IGG says, I love it when Joe and Tim have questions for each other. But
so do I like that.
Yeah, I
Me
do
too. I learned.
It makes my job easier.
I wish you were my professor in law school. You probably give me
Thank
higher.
you. I would have loved you as a student.
Besides being removed from the case, Tim, what could the potential disciplinary action from the Florida be for Dan Rashbaum?
Well, it all depends. They're going to, if the bar gets a complaint, either by the judge or for someone else or another lawyer, or someone files a complaint, then they got to give notice. He has an opportunity. They'll do an investigation. This court, this judge needs to find out and have more of an investigation. And maybe he does it in camera. Maybe he brings these parties in camera so he can feel and get an open airing and people not worried about publicly disclosing things, because this is going to come back later anyway, right? A 3.850 is going to come back. Charlie's going to have a 3.850 against Dan. Might as well get this out of the way, get the record so the judge feels comfortable when he makes a ruling, so that he's not jumping off the cliff and a conviction is overturned because he didn't do enough when the red flags are just screaming to the court.
From Keith Malkin, why would Donna want a speedy trial, Joe Pacciuto? She will lose. A delayed trial is a 3D chess move to help Wendy. I don't think she wants to sit in jail. What do you think?
That's what I think. I mean, she's wanted a speedy trial from the get-go. Typically, you want a speedy trial, at least in part because you think you're going to be acquitted. And the faster the trial, the faster the acquittal, the faster you can go your own way.
Not necessarily, Professor.
Oh, what else? Go ahead, tell me.
As Lee Corso says, not so quickly. There are lawyers that
football, huh?
some lawyers go to trial when they think they don't have the evidence, DNA back, and sometimes they win, but then sometimes they lose. I've never done that. I don't have the courage to do that, but there are some that do it.
Well, and then what was the trial? It was the Lori Vallow, is that it, trial where the death penalty was off the table because the defense asked for a speedy trial and the state got in some discovery a couple of days late and they got that off the table. So yeah, you're right. It can be tactical.
Yeah. By the way, Michael Schaub is asking, he said he missed the court proceedings. If you go to the video preceding this, not the live, you can watch it all on the replay there. If Rashbaum represents Donna moving forward, Tim Jansen, this has come up before, does he necessarily have to stick to the extortion theory, or could a whole new theory come up?
Well, that's what George is concerned about. Is there a new theory coming in because of that email that she wants to be able to call Charlie in rebuttal, right? So I can see Georgia wanting to keep her all her avenues open. So we'll see. I think it's foolish on Donna's part to go forward, but
for Georgia also, if this doesn't go now, all the witness prep is going to have to be redone for the next trial. I mean, it's a lot of repeat work on a trial where she's already gone to trial, on a case where she's already gone to trial 3 times. So I can certainly understand, as I said, her perspective about wanting to go forward. I don't know.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to join you in the courtroom at 1:15.
Oh, that's amazing. And then we'll come out here. So Tim and I will, just to put a little bow on this, at 1:15, the COE will take this live. I'm thinking out loud here. Joe Pacciuto, if you want to come on at 1:15 and just during breaks kind of give your analysis of what we're seeing at 1:15, that'd be great. Just not talking over any of the lawyers or the judge. We would greatly appreciate that. Tim and I will be in the courtroom, and then after the courtroom, Tim and I will hop on this stream and we'll break it all down with Tim. But look at that. Tim will come here. So COE, make sure that Joe and Tim, not really Tim, but just make sure Space Coast is taking the live. Just make sure that Joe has an invite for the 1:15 show. Joe Pacciuto, to you, I was going to ask you this a while ago. What is your gut telling you right now? And I know it's not a very fair question. Just Judge Everett said, look, I have to figure out what to do with Dan Rashbaum. Thank you so much, Genzo. That's very sweet. What's your gut telling you? Where does this trial, where does this case stand? Do you think we see it move forward? He did mention jury selection at 2 p.m. Will we see a trial in the next few days?
My gut is fighting with my hope, and my hope is I want to see the trial go. It's been such a long wait. I think what he's wrestling with is a very strong inclination to remove Daniel Rashbaum from the defense team. and a strong push to move this trial forward and not have to delay and schedule it for many months, down the road. And my hope and I'm too at in my own mind wrestling with this. I do think my guess is it will depend in part on what the research he's doing now shows him and what the advice from other lawyers is. But I think if you were on a high mountain looking at this and had no card in the game or whatever that phrase would be, you would say, let's remove the defense team and let's start again.
For Mary Coppola for Tim, and then we will begin to wrap at the 2-hour mark of this stream. I know we're talking about legalities, but don't you think they're making Donna look very old and matronly for sympathy? Charlie was so well dressed, and Donna looks like a bag lady. Just to reiterate, Donna had her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Obviously, she was not allowed to get her hair dyed. She's in a black suit jacket. But Tim, this is just par for the course, right? They're just trying to make her look like an older grandmotherly type woman, correct?
Yeah, I saw a lawyer one time had the client go in the courtroom in a wheelchair, and then after court he'd get out and walk to his car and drive home. So it's theatrics. That's the costume they're going to play, and they're going to make her look like the little old lady was just looking after her son. And
look at this. Professor Patuto has the coolest hair. I agree. Smart and cool. Bravo to you. Joe Patuto, since you are the professor, and a lot of people are incredibly confused right now. I hate to do this to you, but can you kind of just take us back to, can you just break down what's happening right now in kind of plain terms, starting with this motion that was filed Thursday or Friday by the appellate attorney for Charlie Adelson? What just happened and what is transpiring?
Well, it started with the subpoena of Charlie to testify. The appellate lawyers this Thursday or Friday. Sorry, my phone is going off. I must have had an alert in it. Looked at that subpoena, spoke to Charlie about his rights and whether a waiver of the attorney-client privilege that ran from Rashbaum to him and ran prior to the first trial through to the conviction and even a fair amount afterwards. So anyway, that attorney-client privilege, whether it was in his best interest to waive it in order to testify at Donna's trial and be subject to cross-examination. And the ethical issue comes in not in the state putting Charlie on the stand, but in the defense, including the defense team cross-examining Charlie on behalf of Donna. Now, Charlie was Rashbaum's client. Donna is his client. He's got an obligation to both a former client and to a current client. So that's where the clear conflict arises. Charlie then decided not to waive his attorney-client privilege that ran to Rashbaum, and that then sent the defense scurrying, and the defense then filed a motion saying, well, Morris never represented Charlie, and he's had a firewall put around him. He's never heard anything about the case from Daniel Rashbaum, so he is free to cross-examine Charlie because nothing in his cross-examination can emanate from anything that Charlie told Rashbaum. And then the defense also said, and if that doesn't work, we can bring in an independent lawyer to do the cross-examination. And clearly that lawyer can't be tainted because that lawyer has never sat at the defense table, never had any information. Initially, the appellate lawyers for Charlie had said they thought that a firewall around Morris, if the judge agreed that there had been a firewall, that is, he didn't know anything from Rashbaum about the case, that would work and an independent lawyer would work. But then she came in this morning and said she had looked a little more closely at the rules and she doesn't think that would work. At which point then the defense offered to get a full waiver from Donna as to any right she might have if the cross-examination by an independent lawyer is completely ineffective because that independent lawyer doesn't know enough about the trial or the case to be able to do an effective cross-examination. And that was the waiver that I found so astonishing that came on right after the break, where the new third-party lawyer, the young-looking one, I don't know his name, I don't know that I heard it, got up and said she has agreed to waive even if the cross-examination is ineffective. So Donna, in order to keep Rashbaum on the case, is willing to waive even a claim that the cross-examination of Charlie, which may be important to her defense, can be ineffective, and that's still okay as long as she gets to keep Dan Rashbaum as her lawyer. That's where she is. The other end of this is whether Charlie is willing to say that he's willing to come in and testify and be subject to cross-examination, and that's where they're still trying to work it out. And I think the judge is now trying to decide whether this requires Charlie's waiver, whether Donna's complete willingness to give up any claim to ineffective assistance of counsel is enough, and they're going to come back on the record to try to work out now where they are.
I just want to reiterate that, Tim has some sources telling him that Dan is going to be let go. None of that is confirmed. We don't know that. We're not going to know it for sure until Judge Everett comes back at 1:15. We're going to be here for that at 1:15 to hear what Dan Rashbaum has to say. This is an interesting comment. I'm just curious to get, thank you, Professor Potato. It's Patuto. And thank you, STS. From Colette Green here, any chance that non-trial lawyer Wendy is orchestrating this, giving advice to family and their attorneys, and we find ourselves in the middle of this cluster? Do you think there's any way? I don't even know that Wendy is that shrewd legally to even come up with this kind of a scenario. What do you think, Joe Patuto?
I think there is no way. That would be a no-win for her to have any involvement in this. If we want to talk about her possible involvement in a conspiracy, and that evidence were to come out, that would seem to me to be nail or make it much more likely that there would be a case for conspiracy with her. I don't see that she has anything to gain by doing this. And were I would stay as far away from this issue and these issues as I could.
Look at this, Meryl Streep calling into question my lawyering abilities. I'm not a lawyer, so there you go, Meryl. And by the way, I think you're I think you're actually a great actress. You deserve the 97 Oscars that you have. Is there a possible, one more question here, then we'll start to wrap up. Is there a possible nefarious reason, Professor Patuto, that Donna won't let go of Dan as her lawyer? I mean, before you answer that, I can say that Dan did indicate that he sort of looks to Donna Adelson almost as a maternal figure. He's known her for a long time, so there's a personal connection there. But anything nefarious on her part, do you think?
I can't imagine what it could be. If she really wants a speedy trial, holding on to him and creating this mess is nothing that's going to facilitate a speedy trial. I don't see anything nefarious about it. I see a lot that is unintelligent about it, and an exercise of very, very poor judgment on her part, but nothing nefarious.
All right. So just to remind everyone, there was this crazy hearing on this so-called Charlie Adelson motion today. Judge Everett is now back in his chambers. He is deciding the fate of Dan Rashbaum and whether or not this trial moves forward. He will resume court at 1:15. At 1:10, Space Coast will be running the stream. The COE is going to send Joe Patuto a link. Joe Patuto will be sitting with you during the 1:15 resumption of court. Tim Jansen will be with me in the courtroom, and as soon as court breaks for jury selection, Tim and I will come out and join Joe Patudo to break down the very latest. This is a long, windy road to the start of this trial. And the question right now is, does this trial begin or is it continued? I think the only one who may know the answer to that right now is Judge Stephen Everett himself. And I don't even think he knows at this point exactly what is going to happen. So, Joe Patudo, thank you so much. Amazing insight. The COE is going to immediately email you a link for the next one at 1:15. We will see you then. I'm going to miss the elevator beeps when they're very, I have headphones on, so I'm not hearing them, but I imagine they're quite annoying. Maybe I'll do the afternoon in the elevator. Wouldn't that be a surprise? Joe Patudo, did you have something?
No, I just was telling you I'm gonna sign off right now because I've got
Okay.
appointment
All
coming up.
righty.
I'll see
Look
you
for the
later.
link. Okay, take care, Joe. Thank you, everybody. And then there was one. I'm sitting here. I don't even know where Steve Cohen is, but he was kind enough to come here and guard my equipment. We're going to take a lunch break. We're going to see you at 1:15. If you missed court proceedings this morning, it's on the previous video. Go ahead, watch it, and watch the insanity. We're back at 1:15 Eastern. Love you, America.